If you set a goal and hit it, but your values are left by the wayside, did you really get what you want? Everyone has values, and in financial planning, everyone has goals, but those values don't often seem to get into the conversation. It's different with my guest today, and he's going to give us some tips on how to get started on bringing values into your discussions. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. Not only is that usually what they want, but care is better when the provider owns the practice because that's when they're going to have the most freedom to make the clinical decisions they think are best. It's not the same when somebody else owns the practice. Usually, eventually, sometimes, whatever, their agenda starts to creep in, and it's just more for the provider to think about. Let's just get rid of all that and keep it private. My guest today is Daniel Wrenne. Daniel is the owner of Finance for Physicians. He loves helping people use their finances to live better lives. Ultimately, he wants to live a life worth imitating and help others do the same. Above all, he values his faith in Christ and his family, and most of his spare time involves wrestling his boys, Noah, Henry, and Andrew, coaching soccer, and spending time with his wife, Alison. And he really wants me to say, it should be noted, he has a pretty serious hot sauce obsession. Daniel, thanks for coming on Practice Care. I'm curious to just like fire up the ghost peppers and say, let's wrestle. How does this work?
Yeah,
Do you just
peppers
double take the pain, or what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I love it.
Thanks for coming on. I would like you to hit the hot sauce obsession just a little bit, but I want to start with you where I start with every guest, which is the bio I just read is short. That's what I asked for. Fill in the gaps. Help us to get to know you a bit better. I'm curious. I ask a lot of guests, why are you in this profession? How'd you get there? But, fill in with whatever you like.
Yeah, so I started my career in 2005, I guess, and I was finance grad, and I'm like, I like finance, I like, money, and I realized that a lot of my buddies didn't like money and finance, so I'm like, I guess I could help people with this, with money.
Okay.
And so at the career fair in college, all the big financial advisor firms were there, and they're like, you can help people with money and make a lot of money yourself. So I'm like, deal, that sounds good. And
sounds good. Yeah.
took one of those jobs. And I was doing that it was a big insurance company. I won't say their name, but I worked there for several years. But the deal there was basically like, they teach you how to sell products. And a lot of the people that bought the products, or my customers, were physicians. And it's kind of like you set yourself up as like a financial advisor, a trusted financial advisor, but really it's like a disguise, and you're really just a salesperson selling products. And I did that for a number of years. Basically what I realized is, and kind of this ties into what we're going to talk about, is I was like living in conflict with my values. Because I mean, if you asked me at the time, I was like, why do you do what you do? What's most important to you? And I would say something like, with my profession, I would say something like, well, most important thing is that I take the best care of my clients possible. Like, they're number one.
Yep.
But like, if you looked at my actions, or, when I finally came around to looking at my actions, I was like, actually, I'm not doing that. I'm like making my own, financial well-being as number one, and then trying to make sure I take care of the clients as number two, or, lower. And so upon getting to that realization, I was like, I got to get out of here. And I left and started my own business to kind of flip the script on that, and, put values as number one. And then the reason we started working with physicians is I had the pleasure of working with a lot of physicians in that prior role. And I'm like, of all the people I work with, I love working with physicians the most.
Right. And are you physicians only, or just primarily?
We're probably 90% physicians. I would say it's like physicians and their friends, or my physicians, their friends, and then a few of my family members.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
like,
okay.
That's how it works.
So values-based investing, values-based money, we kind of talked about this before we started recording. Just to make sure we're all thinking about it the same way, when you say those terms, what do you mean by them?
I would say values-based money would be like, so let's define values. So values, I would define values as like, what is most important to you?
Okay.
So values-based money would be like when your money is in alignment with what's most important to you.
Okay.
So you've probably heard, maybe you've heard this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's like, don't tell me what's most important to you. Show me your calendar and your checkbook, and I'll tell you what's most important.
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah. Or
So
variations
that
of right. Because your actions say it better than what you say it is. Right.
actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
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 So
Okay.
that's kind of what, values based money is like ideally your actions are in alignment with your values. Your financial actions are in alignment with your values.
Okay. So you've got a new client, potential new client. What does a discussion with values look like with the typical client? Because I would imagine if you asked me that, I would have a big fat long blank stare. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got
Yeah.
values. I don't. If you ask me what are my top three values, I think I'd struggle to articulate them, which might probably be
Right.
embarrassing. But I mean, hopefully, I'm not that uncommon.
No, that's pretty standard. We have basically there's a bunch of questions that we have in like in my head I have in like my question bank, and it's really we want it to be a conversation that's comfortable. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like dependent on the conversation, but like the gist of it is, at some point along the way, we're gonna ask you like what's most important to you, and it might not be like that blunt and straightforward, but sometimes it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that, when we ask that question, a lot of times people do give us a sideways stare. They're like, "What? I
I don't know.
didn't."
Yeah. When do we fire
and
up Excel? I mean, what are we talking about? Yeah.
or they'll say like, "What do you mean?" Or they'll say like, "I haven't really thought much about that." Or, and that's perfect. That's actually a good sign that it needs to be like delved into deeper. So it's like the typical physician is like, especially when you're like fresh out of training or in the middle of training, especially, it's like your head down, you're just rocking, like
Mm-hmm.
working so hard. Like it's very, very likely that you haven't had much time to think about things like that are kind of like
Right.
abstract or, it's like, what do you mean my
Yeah.
values? I'm trying to finish training is my value. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So
So
that's,
how do
that's
you
a lot of the
tease it out
times
of them? Like, how do you tease? You get the
it,
blank stare. Like, I don't know, man. I'm not even thinking about that. What do you mean? How do you? So what do you do
right.
then?
So like it's kind of a little bit of a series of questions depending on the responses, but when we're talking like one on one,
Mm-hmm.
but like we said, the typical first response is blank stare. So maybe we kind of talk through like what is a value, and so one exercise we might do is say, okay, well let's think about your past. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the moments in your life? If you start like as young as you can remember
Mm-hmm.
of your first memory, and then like let's walk through like your past and think about the things that were some of the most meaningful moments you had.
Okay.
So, like, let's say it's when you had your child
Mm-hmm.
or something, or you got married, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so so tell me why that's most important as far as a
Okay.
meaningful moment. Those are good like clues into values.
Okay.
That's one exercise. Another exercise is like, well, let's think about pretend like you're in your we're celebrating your 80th birthday, and we're
Mm.
like pumped up and excited, and everybody's like, "Good job, you had a good life," and
Mm-hmm.
lots of cheers, and they're celebrating all the good things that you accomplished and the person you became. What does that look like? Like,
Mm-hmm.
who did you become? Um,
What's being said about you that you like? That kind of thing.
who are the people involved?
Mm.
Yeah, what are they saying about you? And that's another good like that's a good prompt to like start to think about what actually is most important.
I wonder, like, do you get people who are just utterly surprised at what they find themselves saying?
I mean, I think that so that I kind of think of that as like first layer. Most of the time, people it's not like a shocker aha. It's more of just like a yeah, I can so for me it would be like my faith and my family are
Mm-hmm.
always like top of the list, and they have been for a long time. So those, even if I'm like in a busy stretch where I've lost track of those, and I kind of it's not going to be usually a big aha. It's just kind of like, yeah, that those kind of makes sense. But when we start to peel back the layers is usually when the aha or like the, man, that's a shocker moments happen.
Got it. Okay. And then when you
And
have
that's where
cup,
the actions come into it. It's like,
what do you mean?
so it's like, I say my family's most important, and it's like, great, cool. Then what? I mean, So what I mean is like when we start to peel back the layers on what does that actually mean and how are you actually doing something about it, that's where it
Okay.
gets a little uncomfortable, I guess.
Oh, you mean like if they say, family's the most important thing to me, but then you start to see they're not spending much time with their family, for example. You go, man, that's a little bit of a
Right.
disagreement
And
there.
it's not like I'm not gonna I'm not like show me your calendar and your checkbook. Like I don't
Yeah.
actually use that approach. It's more like self-discovery is a
Okay.
better approach.
Okay. Um, and do you work with couples also? I imagine you.
It need yeah, has to be both.
Yeah.
If
Okay. Do you ever have examples where, the values are different between one couple and the
yeah,
other and they've got to kind of harmonize them somehow?
yeah, usually they're well, I would say there's always differences. Like for example, something that's really important to me is snow skiing. We just talked about it. I just got back
Mhm.
from snow skiing. I absolutely love snow skiing. And I guess you could say hot sauce is a value. It's kind of a weird one, but
No
my
judgments.
wife would not say those.
Hmm.
So those are not like my top values. Like I would
Hmm.
family's more important
Hmm.
than snow skiing. Like
Sure.
you know, so but my wife has but both my wife and I have family as a like top value, and both of us have faith as a top value. So those are like the top ones, and those are common top ones we see with people. But ideally, I mean, in theory, you could have completely different values from your spouse, but in reality, most people have similar core values, but then
Right.
differ the further down you go on the list.
Yeah. And as you were saying this, I was thinking, yeah, you've got to prioritize them. So some values are more core,
That's
more
part of the
important than
exercise.
others. Yeah.
It's like clarify your values, prioritize or order your values,
Right.
and then look at the actions
Yeah.
underlying them and, see how
Right.
you're in alignment.
Right. So, if you were very family oriented and your wife was the opposite, that could be a problem. But you have a hot
Um,
sauce obsession. If she could care less about hot sauce, it's not really it doesn't
yeah,
register, you know,
right. That's right.
unless she throws away your hot sauce collection all the time or something. I don't know. Even then you'd be
That'd
like,
be
come on, really? Yeah, right. But it wouldn't rise to the level of, you know, we need to talk. Yeah.
yep, yep.
So that's how you bring values to the surface. And then we bring back to, all right, now we have goals with money, right? Goals,
Mhm.
long-term goals, short-term goals. I'm wondering, is the value or the goal more important? And what happens if they disagree? What do you
Yeah.
do?
So that's a good question. What I would say, they're both important, but like I think values should be the undercurrent to your goals. I think ideally you use your values to shape your goals.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. A
Yeah.
lot of people come to us and they're like, when we, a lot of times they're goals centered. So they're like, I want to be financially independent by age 50. And that's why I want to talk to you because I need help doing that.
Right.
So, so we're like, okay, that sounds good. We'll figure that out. But
Hmm.
we get into their values and it's like, um, family's number one
Hmm.
on their values. And so what we find is, in just this hypothetical example, they're working like 80 hours a week to become financially independent by age 50. So
Hmm.
basically, and therefore are not able to spend quality time with their family.
Hmm.
And so in that, they've basically placed their goals above their values. And that's where that's actually one of the most common problems we see is people place their goals above their values. And goals don't bring fulfillment. Like if you've hit goals, you know that. Like
Hmm.
they're good, like points to
Hmm.
hit. I mean, to keep you on trajectory, but the question is trajectory to what? Like,
Yeah.
what is the ultimate end goal? Like that's why I'm saying, like when you're 80, like what do you want your life to be remembered as? And that's why values are more important, is because they kind of tie more to meaning and fulfillment.
Okay. So, so the example of I'm working 80 hours a week so I can retire by 50 and thus spend more time with my family. What does that conversation look like? Like you're putting it off or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it.
Is it your goal as their advisor to get them to change that? Say, look, man, why don't you work till 62, spend more time at home along
As
the way, same number, or that kind of thing?
as like if I'm working with somebody one on one, it's kind of more like we're gonna shine, be like the mirror. It's like show them, help. That's ideally where it works. Is we help them see what's actually happening. or
Okay.
self-discover. That's
Mhm.
the best way for it to work, but sometimes that doesn't always work, and sometimes it's a situation where we just have to tell them how it is.
Okay.
And it also depends on the person. Some people are more responsive to like super direct feedback.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that I feel like that's part of our responsibility, is to call attention to conflicts of things.
Hmm.
Sometimes
Is
they're
it,
painful.
yeah, feedback's tough. So how do you give it? I mean, because is it your objective in this hypothetical to say, look, if these people say that their top value is really family, and we see them not living that value, we really want them to change. Is that your
Yeah,
goal? So how do you?
it's really as simple as just saying that like I think it conflicts with your ability to spend time with family. It's like that comes up a lot. It's like a lot of our clients are. Another example is like, I want to buy a home, or because we're moving, or I want to upgrade. And so what it typically comes down to is like, okay, I know you want to do 1.5 million, but doing that is going to require you to work X number of hours. So if you did 1 million instead, you got to think about it from the standpoint of that gives you less obligation to work, which
Hmm.
ties in or allows you to have more free time at home. So in other
Hmm.
words, the more you spend on a home, the more you need to work to pay for the home, the less
Hmm.
time you have to spend with family. So basically, spending more on a home conflicts with your value of spending
Mm.
time with family. So you just need to be aware of that
Okay.
conflict.
Okay. So it's
And
kind of
that,
playing out the math and seeing how the ripple effects are. And
right. And it's not me saying my value. That's the other thing we have to be careful. It's like we want to remind them of what they said their values are,
sure.
and just be help them to show them that there's a conflict. But if there's a conflict, we have to tell them.
Got it. So do you ever have, I'm going to assume the answer is yes, but do you ever clients who they walk out of a meeting like they're really excited, you're right, I'm going to line them up, but then they stray back like old habits die hard, and they I don't know, start
Yeah.
working more again, and they're cutting corners, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, like I would say the number one, um, the number one, like distraction, I guess, from your values is the world's values or
Hmm.
cultural values.
Okay.
And so it's really, it's a good thing to be like, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited. But then putting into practice is stinking hard,
Mm-hmm.
because you go in the world and you're like, oh, but my buddy's doing it this way. And, or I
Yeah.
heard that. And,
Yeah.
or my boss is putting pressure on me to do this. Or, I mean, there's all these like pulls in
Mm-hmm.
the world and in the moment, and they're super strong. And so putting it into practice is super difficult.
Yeah.
It's easy to say things and get excited about them, but like putting them into practice is where the challenge comes in.
Yeah. So do you work with clients in that? It's because it's changing habits, right? Which is doable, certainly, but not so easy.
Yeah.
Takes
It's,
work.
it does take work. So, yeah, that's part of it. It's like, if we can get people to articulate it and say it, that's a good first step.
Hmm.
But then, like, if we can get them to run it by us, that's another good step, like
Hmm.
accountability.
Hmm.
Or if there's a couple, to get them to talk about it, that's to be super open about it. That's another good step. So it's building in layers of like accountability and checks and balances. And um, just, sometimes it's a couple different accountability measures will help prevent slip ups. It's like working out. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
any habit development is difficult, but
Yes. Yes. And some are
not
deep.
impossible.
Some are deep.
Yes.
I've been trying to work on, of all things, posture, because I'm having a couple of posture related issues. And no matter, I know anybody who's
Yeah.
going to
It's,
watch this on
you got to
YouTube
think
will
about
see
it.
us try to straighten up. And I had no idea how bad it is and how long it's been this bad. And I'm constantly correcting myself. If I don't know what I look like when but just, the longer you've been doing something one way, the longer it's going to take to
Right.
change it. But it's worth changing because I don't want any pain anymore in my
But,
shoulder. So,
but some people will be like, the knowledge that I have bad posture is all I need, and they're
mhm.
just gonna self correct. But most people will probably be like, I want to self correct, but like it's hard, and so maybe your spouse is like, remember about the posture thing,
Mm-hmm.
or you have visits again to the doctor or whoever you
Mm-hmm.
go see. And
Mm-hmm.
so most people, it's not as easy as just knowing.
No, it's a good start. That's why I'm always correcting myself, because now I know when it's bad. And clearly I'm reverting all the time because I'm correcting myself all the
Right.
time. So yeah.
But
Um,
values are interesting. Most people say, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, I'm probably in alignment with my values. And that's so it'd be like if I was just asking you on the street, I'm like, how's your posture? You're gonna be like, it's good.
yeah.
Everybody kind of tends to gravitate to like all is good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
It's
easy
funny.
to say
Like if you
that.
ask somebody randomly, how well do you think you live, aligned to your values? Yeah, it's probably fine. Please name your top three values. I don't know. Well, if you don't know what they are, I mean, how
How
could you possibly say that you're in alignment with them?
right.
They
Yep.
should rattle off the top of your tongue. Very interesting. Um, there's 1,000 offshoot questions I could ask you. They're all kind of rumbling through my mind, but to stay disciplined and stay on the bite size of advice here on practice care, there's a couple of wrap up questions just kind of bring us home that I ask every guest. The first one is there anything you think I should have asked you, but I just didn't think to ask you in the context of this?
I've been thinking about it because you mentioned it before we started recording, and
Yeah.
I have not thought of anything yet.
Okay. Well then,
But we did good.
we did good. All right, good. And then the second wrap up question is, imagine we've caught a listener's attention and they want to start going down this path of lining things up with their values, but they just don't know where to start. Sometimes people are enthusiastic about something, but they just don't know where to start. So, is there one or maybe two super simple practical things they could do to get started?
Yeah, I have.
I like the funeral thing or the 80th birthday thing.
Yeah,
Not
so
necessarily quick, but that seems, what would you like people saying about you? It seems like a doable exercise.
right. Yeah, anybody can do that. It takes 15 minutes or less than that. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a values exercise that we created. It's like a 5-page PDF,
Okay.
um, and it walks you through kind of some of the stuff I talked about plus a lot more. And it has like a worksheet to help you like iron out
Okay.
the values and order them, and then come up with action items. And it has the 80th birthday exercise and then those
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things as like prompting measures. So I'll share that link with you afterward, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of a PDF to help. So that's the biggest action step I would suggest is like, if you're hearing this and you're like, I don't know what my values are, or you're thinking, I wonder if my values are in alignment with my actions.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge first step to just start with just clarifying it. And I think this would be a great exercise. And that, you're off to the races typically once you can kind of get that on paper, and then you
Yeah.
start to come up with action items.
Yeah. Is the, when you said it's about a 15-minute exercise, is this the kind of exercise where, what comes to your mind first is probably what it is, and if you really start deliberating, you're probably overthinking it? Is it
Yeah,
one of
it's
those?
not a right. So if you're a perfectionist, limit yourself to 15 minutes.
Okay.
So like it's more of a brainstorm kind of thing. It's more of an evolving thing. Like it changes. I've done it a million times with myself and my wife, and it's never been exactly the same.
Sure.
So it's more of just going through it. That's the key. I mean, how many times do you like take 15 minutes to think about your values? Like nobody does that. It's
Nobody
just
does
not the kind
this.
of thing you.
Yeah. It's just tough to grasp the question. It's simply worded, but I'm like, what's a value? You could really get, is that a value?
Right.
Is this a value? Is that something else? Yeah. You can get lost in terms too.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Daniel, thank you for coming on Practice Care, shedding a light on this topic. It's important. It's not necessarily totally business related. We say that the business side of private practice, but they do intertwine in your values in your practice as it pertains to business and how you want to treat patients and do everything else. It does matter. So I would say it's a worthwhile exercise in that context as well. So thank you for coming on and bringing this issue to the surface. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Glad to be on here.
Yeah. And so you gave us some contact information. We're going to put that in the show notes. Shoot the link to the PDF over. We'll get that in there as well. And so that anybody who wants to get a hold of Daniel has another way to do so now. A couple of points before we wrap up. First, if you have experience on the business side of private practice, whether you are a private practice owner yourself, or if you're someone like Daniel or I who seeks to serve private practice owners, either way, we'd like you to come on Practice Care and share your wisdom with the world. In the show notes for Daniel's episode and every episode, there's a link, a couple of clicks, very quick and easy. Just tell us what's on your mind so we can get you scheduled as soon as possible. And finally, please subscribe to Practice Care. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google. We're on YouTube also, pretty much every major platform. We drop a new episode every week, and the easiest way to stay up to date is to subscribe. Thanks very much. And until next time.